Good evening, my dear students. So, in today's class, we are going to start our chapter of history, that is Women, Caste and Reform. In this chapter, we are going to see that whatever the situation of women in the earlier time, what was the situation faced by the caste in the earlier time, and what reforms or what initiatives have been taken by the different reformers for the welfare of both women and caste. Okay, so now, have you ever thought of how children lived about 200 years ago? It means that how children, how women, how different caste people are living nowadays, the situation of all of them was very different previously. Nowadays, most girls from middle class families go to school and often study with boys. On growing up, many of them go to colleges, universities, and take jobs after that. They have to be adults before they are legally married. It means that now we all can see that now time girls are going to school and often they are also studying with boys. It means they are studying in co-ed schools. Now when they used to complete their school or when they enter in the college, that situation was not same previous. Now if women have to get married, she has to attain a legal married age that is considered to be 18. Okay, so according to law, they can marry anyone they like from any caste and community, and widows can remarry too. Now, this casteism has reduced a little bit in comparison of the previous time, and now what important reform has been taken that widows can also remarry too. Now, so all women, like all men, can vote and stand for elections also. Of course, these rights are not actually enjoyed by all. Whatever we all are speaking that this has done, this has not done, whatever the situation is now, this is not accessible to all. But some people are still having this opportunity. Poor people have little or no access to education. We all know this. In poor people, that is not only for women. Poor people means men and women both. Still, all poor people don't have the access to education. In many families, women cannot choose their husbands also. So, 200 years ago, these things were very different because most children were married off at an early age. In the previous time, the marrying age was very less. And for women, when she turned to be 8 or 9, she used to get married. And the age difference between the girl and her husband was also very as if a girl was of 8 years of age, her husband used to be of 24 years of age or 30 years of age. It means there was a huge difference between the age of the wife and the husband. So both Hindu and Muslim men could marry more than one wife. This process was known to be as polygamy, when a man can have more than one wife. So in the previous time, this process was also very similar. In some parts of the country, widows were praised if they chose death by burning themselves on the funeral pyre of their husbands. Women who did this in this manner, whether willingly or otherwise, were known to be as sati. This practice was very famous in the previous time, as if any lady's husband died, so she either she want or she didn't want it didn't matter at that time. Just she has to do what? She has to burn herself. She has to throw herself in the funeral pyre of her husband. And who used to follow this process, they were known to be as sati. It means sati means the virtuous women. Women's rights to property were also restricted. Besides, most women had virtually no access to education also. It means at that time, so many rights were not provided to the women, as there were no right to property also for the women. This law has changed in 2005. It means whatever the previous law of Hindu Succession Act that was previously launched, in that act There was no right for the women to get the property from her father's property. But in 2005, a new act was in 2005. In that act, it was changed. Now, women, girls can also get the share of the property of their father's or their husband's property. In many parts of the country, people believe that if a woman was educated, would become a widow. Now, this famous quote was also started gaining popularity that if a woman would start to become educated, then there will be a lot of chances for her to get the widow. So all these were the superstitious beliefs. उनको क्या लगता था कि अगर कोई भी women जो है वो पढ़ लिख लेगी तो वो क्या हो जाएगी, widow हो जाएगी. So here you can also see a painting that is given in your books. That painting, it is of Sati Pratha. A lady is praying the Sati. This painting was drawn by Balthazar Solvin in 1813. This was one of the many pictures of Sati painted by the European artist who came to India. The practice of Sati was seen as evidence of the barbarism of the East. Now, what is barbarism? Barbarism is a harsh treatment that was done for the girls. For with what girls? Whose husband died. Now, we will move further on. So, the differences between men and women were not only once in the society, in most regions, most people were divided along in caste. So, as we have started the chapter with the inequalities that were established among the girls, now we will read this context in the form of caste also. So, this difference was not only limited to the girls, this was also spread towards the caste. Brahmins and Kshatriyas considered as themselves as upper caste, and others after that comes traders and moneylenders who were referred to as Vaishyas that were placed after them, and then came peasants and artisans such as weavers and potters who are called to be as Shudras. So we can also make a flowchart of them. So if we talk about that in the starting, our society was divided into four varnas by the Brahmins. So at first, Brahmins kept themselves. After Brahmins, there come to be Kshatriyas. After Kshatriyas, there are Vaishyas, and after Vaishyas, there are Shudras. So these all are the four varnas on what the society was divided by the Brahmins. And at the lowest rung were those who labored to keep cities and villages clean and worked at jobs that upper caste considered polluting and could lead to the loss of caste status. It means those who were used to come at the lowest bottom side of that flowchart, they were considered as the polluting caste by some orthodox people. What they used to believe, if any person from that particular caste or untouchables will come at their homes or will touch them, then they will become polluted. So, the upper caste also treated many of these groups at the bottom as untouchables. They were not allowed to even enter temples, draw water from the wells used by the upper caste, or even they were not allowed to bath in the ponds that were used by the upper caste. And they were also seen as the inferior human beings. It means if they have become human being in this birth, so they have just done a very big sin. It was considered by the Brahmins, or we can say some Orthodox people. So, over the 19th and 20th century, many of these reforms and perceptions slowly change. Now, as we will move further in this chapter, what we will look that these problems, these norms, or these perceptions were slowly started changing, but it took a lot of time to change. And you will see so many reformers have taken the part to start this initiative. So many people have taken so many efforts and they have banned sati pratha also. They have started different act like the widows remarriage act was also passed by different reformers. So keep reading this chapter. This is a very good chapter from which you will get a very basic and understandable concept. Thank you. So, our next topic is working towards change. So, in this topic, we will read that so many reformers came to start it. So, after that, so many reforms has taken. Now, from early 19th century, we find debates and discussions about social customs, practices taking on a new character. One important reason for this was the development and new forms of communication. Now, at that time, different kind of communication process has started, like first time books, newspapers, magazines, and leaflets and pamphlets were started printing. Now, you all are aware of all these, but that leaflets, what is leaflets? Leaflet is a kind of a big leaf on which the things were printed. So all these were very cheap and more accessible to the people as compared to the manuscript, because after some time manuscript started fragile. So therefore ordinary people can also read them. Many of them could also write and express their ideas in their own languages. So what was the feature of all these printed material, that the language that was used in all those materials was very normal, or that can be read by or understood by each and every person. So when people used to read them, it creates a lot of encouragement in their hearts, in their minds, and they have also started to write and express their views in their own languages. All kind of issues like social, political, economic, religious can now be debated and discussed by men, and sometimes women are also started taking initiative for that. So the discussion could reach out to a wider public and could become linked to movement for social change. Now, these debates were often initiated by Indian reformers, and in that reformers we have a very important name, that is Raja Ram Mohan Roy, from 1772 till 1833. Now, in his general period, in his whole life, he has founded a reform association that was named as Brahmo Sabha. So when he found this name was as Brahmo Sabha, Brahmo Sabha, and later we n- known it as Brahmo Samaj. It was established in Calcutta in 1828. Kindly note down this year also. So Brahmo Sabha or Brahmo Samaj was founded by Raja Ram Mohan Roy in 1828, and the theme or main aim of this association was monotheistic view of Hinduism. People such as Rajaram Mohan Roy are described as reformers because now why we are calling him as a reformer? Reform means change, and reformer means the person who has taken any initiative to started that change. So he used to be called as reformer because they felt that changes were necessary in the society and unjust practice needed to be done away with. So they thought the best way to ensure such changes was by persuading people to give up old practices and adopt a new way of life. As all of the people were practicing all of the unjust practices, and how they were all doing this, they were giving a name of ritual. What they used to say whenever someone used to try to stop them, they don't do this, this is a very barbarism practice. So in reply what they used to say, that this is a ritual, ladies should do this kind of ritual, or other persons should do these kind of rituals that are started from many years ago, and this is to be done for the sake of God. But these reformers has changed the view of all kind of people. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was keen to spread the knowledge of Western education in the country and bring about greater freedom and equality for women. He also wrote about the way women were forced to bear the burden of domestic work. In his compilations and his writings, he has also discussed how women at that time were forced to bear the burden of all domestic kind of work, how they were confined to the home and kitchen and not allowed to move out and become educated. Now you can also see the picture of Rajaram Mohan Roy that was painted by Rembrandt Pearly in 1833. So that's all for today. I hope you have got the concept of this chapter. Thank you and have a nice day.